I thought the worst was behind me. 2 years after my divorce, I had finally found some peace. My daughter Sophie, 7 years old with the brightest smile you have ever seen, was my whole world. I worked hard as a construction project manager, paid my $1,200 a month in child support, and cherished every Wednesday evening and weekend I got to spend with her. Our small apartment was not much, but Sophie had her own room filled with stuffed animals and pink bedding. We made pancakes on Sunday mornings and read books before bed. Life was simple, stable, and good. Until one Tuesday in March when I opened an email from my ex-wife's lawyer that would turn everything upside down. Before I tell you how this nightmare unfolded, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what happened next will show you exactly why you should never let anyone take advantage of your love for your child. Now let me take you back to the moment everything changed. The divorce had not been easy, but Amanda and I managed to keep it civil for Sophie's sake. We had grown apart over the years. Amanda wanted a lifestyle I could not provide on my $75,000 salary. She craved luxury shopping trips, expensive restaurants, weekend getaways to resorts I had only seen in magazines. I wanted stability, a home where our daughter could grow up feeling secure, where we cooked family dinners and saved for her college fund. Eventually, the gap between what we each wanted became too wide to bridge. When we split, the arrangement seemed fair. I would pay $1,200 monthly in child support, a reasonable amount based on my income and our shared expenses for Sophie. Amanda got primary custody since she worked from home as a freelance graphic designer and could be there when Sophie got home from school. I got every weekend and Wednesday evenings. It was not perfect, but it worked. I threw myself into learning how to be the dad Sophie needed when she was with me. I learned to braid her hair, though my first attempts looked like tangled rope. I figured out how to make her favorite chicken nuggets crispy the way she liked. I turned the second bedroom of my modest apartment into her space, painting the walls lavender, because she said it reminded her of fairy tales. Every paycheck after rent and child support, I set aside what I could for her activities and the little extras that made her smile. Sophie was the kind of kid who asked a million questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? How do birds know where to fly? Can we get a puppy? Her big brown eyes would light up when she figured something out, and I lived for those moments. On our weekends together, we had routines. Saturday mornings meant pancakes with chocolate chips arranged in smiley faces. Saturday afternoons were for the park, where I taught her to ride her bike without training wheels. Sunday mornings we went to the library, where she would pile books into my arms until I could barely see over the stack. About 6 months before that email arrived, Amanda called to tell me she was getting remarried. His name was Troy, and according to her, he was everything I was not. A successful real estate investor who drove a brand new BMW X5 and wore designer suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I felt a pang of something, not quite jealousy, more like inadequacy. But I pushed it aside. If Amanda was happy, and if Troy treated Sophie well, that was what mattered. The first time I saw Troy, he was picking up Sophie from my apartment for Amanda. He barely made eye contact, just gave me a quick nod and a firm handshake that felt more like a dominance display than a greeting. Sophie seemed fine with him, though she never talked about him much. She would mention that Troy took them to fancy restaurants, or that they went to the mall where Amanda bought new clothes, but there was no warmth in her voice when she said his name. Over the following months, I started noticing changes. Sophie would come back from Amanda's house talking about expensive things. Troy apparently told her stories about living the good life and how important it was to have nice things. Amanda's social media was filled with photos of them at upscale restaurants, posing in front of Troy's luxury car, showing off designer handbags. I tried not to pay attention, but it was hard to ignore. Then one Wednesday evening when I picked Sophie up, she said something that stuck with me. "Mommy says you should work harder so we can have nice things too." I felt my stomach drop. I asked her what she meant, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged her little shoulders, barely moving. "Troy says people who work smart live better than people who just work hard." I wanted to defend myself, to explain that I worked plenty hard and that value was not measured in designer labels or expensive cars. But she was 7. How could I explain adult complexities to someone who still believed in the tooth fairy? Instead, I hugged her and suggested we make our special spaghetti for dinner. She perked up immediately the moment forgotten. That Tuesday morning in March started like any other. I was at the construction site reviewing blueprints with my team when my phone buzzed. An email from a law firm I did not recognize. The subject line read, "Child Support Modification Request." My heart started racing before I even opened it. The email was formal cold, written in that particular legal language designed to intimidate. But the core message was crystal clear. Amanda and Troy were requesting that I increase my child support payments from $1,200 per month to $3,600 per month. Triple. They wanted me to triple my child support. I read it again, certain I had misunderstood. But no, there it was in black and white. The reason given was to maintain Sophie's standard of living in her primary residence, and to ensure the child never worries about financial stability. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Amanda and Troy lived in a house that had to be worth at least $500,000. Troy drove a car that cost more than I made in a year. They went on vacations I could only dream of. And they needed more money from me. $3,600 a month was nearly half my take-home pay. After rent, utilities, car payment, insurance, and basic living expenses, I would have nothing left. I would not be able to save. I would not be able to take Sophie anywhere fun. I would barely be able to feed myself. I sat in my truck in the parking lot of the construction site staring at my phone, feeling a wave of emotions I could not quite name. Confusion, anger, fear. This could not be real. There had to be some mistake. I called Amanda that evening after Sophie was asleep in her room at my apartment. She answered on the third ring, her voice neutral, almost businesslike. "I figured you would call." "Amanda, what is this about $3,600? You cannot be serious." "Chandler, Sophie deserves the best. We have a certain lifestyle now and you need to contribute fairly." Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if she was discussing the weather. "Fairly, I pay what the court ordered based on my income. You and Troy live in a mansion. How is asking for half my salary fair?" There was a pause. Then I heard a male voice in the background. "Troy." "Put him on speaker," he said. Amanda must have complied because suddenly Troy's voice filled my ear louder, more commanding. "Look, Chandler, this is not personal. It is about what is best for Sophie. We are providing her with opportunities, experiences, a quality of life. You should want to contribute to that." I gripped the phone tighter. "I do contribute. I contribute plenty. And I give her love and stability when she is with me. That matters more than designer clothes and fancy restaurants." Troy scoffed. "That is easy to say when you cannot afford those things. Sophie is growing up in our world now. She needs to keep up with her peers, have the right things, go to the right places. That costs money. Money you apparently do not have if you need mine." I shot back before I could stop myself. The line went silent for a moment. Then Amanda spoke, her voice harder now. "That is not our problem. Maybe you should get a better job. Maybe you should have thought about your career more seriously instead of settling." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. "I am doing my best. I provide for Sophie. She is happy when she is with me. That should count for something." "It does count," Troy interjected, "but happiness does not pay for private schools or summer camps or the things she needs. We will see you in court, Chandler. Our lawyer will be in touch." The call ended. I sat there on my couch, the apartment suddenly feeling smaller, the walls closing in. I looked at Sophie's backpack by the door, her little shoes lined up neatly, a drawing she had made for me stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet. How had it come to this? Over the next week, the pressure mounted. More emails from their lawyer arrived, each one more threatening than the last, mentioning court dates and legal consequences if I did not comply. Amanda started playing games with my visitation. When I tried to pick up Sophie on Wednesday, Amanda texted saying Sophie had a last-minute school project and could not come. The following weekend, it was a birthday party for a friend. Then it was feeling sick. Each excuse chipped away at my time with my daughter. The Wednesday. I finally did get her. Sophie seemed different. Quieter. We were making grilled cheese sandwiches when she looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Mommy says you do not want to help us anymore." My heart broke. I knelt down to her level, taking her small hands in mine. "Baby, that is not true. I love you more than anything in this world. I would do anything for you. Do you understand that?" She nodded, but I could see the confusion in her face. She was 7. She did not understand adult money problems or court battles. All she knew was what people told her, and right now her mother was painting me as the bad guy. Meanwhile, Troy's social media presence became almost mocking. Photos of expensive dinners with captions like, "Living our best life." Pictures from weekend trips to wine country. A new watch that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He even posted a photo of Sophie at some fancy restaurant dressed up with the caption, "Nothing but the best for our princess." It felt deliberate, like he was rubbing his lifestyle in my face. I knew I needed help. I could not fight this alone. I found a family law attorney named Mr. Harrison who came highly recommended. His office was small but professional, filled with legal books and case files. He was in his 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to assess everything. I showed him the emails, explained the situation. He listened carefully, taking notes, asking questions about Amanda and Troy's lifestyle, their expenses, my income. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "This does not add up," he said finally. "Their lifestyle looks expensive, but demanding money from you suggests something else is going on. People who are genuinely wealthy do not usually squeeze ex-spouses for more child support unless there is a financial motive." "What do you mean?" "I mean, let me do some digging. In cases like this, financial discovery is key. If they are asking for a modification, we have every right to examine their finances too. Sometimes what looks like success is actually a house of cards." His words gave me a sliver of hope, but I tried not to get ahead of myself. I left his office with instructions to document everything, every interaction with Amanda, every expense I had for Sophie, every time my visitation was interfered with. A few days later, I ran into an old colleague named Kyle at a coffee shop near the construction site. We had worked together on a project a few years back. He saw me, waved, came over to my table. "Chandler, hey man, how have you been?" We chatted for a few minutes before he said, "Did not your ex marry that Troy guy, the real estate investor?" I tensed. "Yeah, why?" Kyle lowered his voice, glancing around. "I heard some weird stuff about him through the grapevine. My buddy works in commercial real estate, and apparently Troy's business is not as solid as it looks. There are rumors about deals falling through, properties in trouble. Just thought you should know." My pulse quickened. "You are sure about this?" "I mean, it is just what I heard. But my buddy is pretty plugged in. He said Troy talks a big game, but the numbers do not back it up." I thanked Kyle, my mind racing. Maybe Mr. Harrison was right. Maybe this was not about Sophie at all. 2 weeks later, Mr. Harrison called me into his office. He had that look on his face the one lawyers get when they have found something big. "Chandler, sit down. We need to talk about what I found." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were financial documents, bank statements, tax returns, credit reports. My eyes scanned the pages, trying to make sense of the numbers. "Troy is drowning," Mr. Harrison said bluntly. "His real estate business is a disaster. He has over $200,000 in credit card debt. Multiple properties are facing foreclosure. His tax returns show massive losses for the past 3 years. The BMW leased, the house heavily mortgaged, and they are behind on payments. Everything you see on social media, the fancy dinners, the trips, the lifestyle, it is all smoke and mirrors. They are living on borrowed money and borrowed time." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "So they want my child support money to cover their debts?" "Exactly. They are using Sophie as a financial tool. The request to triple your payments has nothing to do with Sophie's needs. It is about keeping their fake lifestyle afloat. And that, my friend, is something the court will not look kindly upon." I stared at the documents, anger rising in my chest. All those times Amanda had made me feel inadequate, all those posts Troy made about living the good life, all of it was a lie. They were not successful. They were desperate. And they were willing to manipulate the system and use my daughter to get money they did not deserve. What do we do? I asked, my voice steady, despite the fury I felt. We fight back. We file a motion to dismiss their request. We present this evidence. And we turn the tables. You have every right to request a custody modification based on their financial instability and the manipulation they have engaged in. If they are this financially reckless, can they really provide a stable home for Sophie? For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than helplessness. I felt determined. They had picked the wrong person to mess with. I was not going to roll over and let them use my love for my daughter against me. We prepared for the court hearing methodically. Mr. Harrison gathered every piece of evidence we could find. Troy's debt documents. Comparisons between what Troy claimed to earn and what he actually reported to the IRS. Proof that assets he claimed to own were actually leased. Records showing Amanda's personal shopping expenses that had nothing to do with Sophie's needs. Bank statements showing cash flow problems. We also built my case. I documented every penny I had spent on Sophie. Receipts for clothes, toys, books. Records of activities and outings during my time with her. I gathered character references from people who saw me with Sophie regularly. Her teacher, our neighbors, even the librarian at the branch we visited every Sunday. I asked Sophie's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, if she would be willing to speak about Sophie's well-being. She agreed immediately. Sophie is a wonderful child, she told me. She talks about you all the time. She is happy, well-adjusted, doing great in school. Whatever you are doing, it is working. The court date arrived on a gray Thursday morning in May. I wore my best suit, the one I saved for important occasions. My hands were sweating as I walked into the courthouse with Mr. Harrison beside me. Amanda and Troy were already there, sitting with their lawyer. Amanda looked polished in an expensive dress. Troy wore a designer suit and had that same arrogant expression he always carried, like he owned the room. When he saw me, he smirked. But I was not intimidated anymore. I knew the truth. The hearing began. Their lawyer presented their case, first arguing that Sophie deserved to maintain her standard of living, that I should contribute more, because my income allowed it, that it was in the best interest of the child. It was a polished argument, but it was built on sand. When it was our turn, Mr. Harrison stood and presented our evidence methodically, piece by piece. He showed the judge Troy's debt documents. He displayed the comparison between claimed income and actual tax returns. He presented proof of leased assets and foreclosure notices. He showed credit card statements with charges for personal luxuries, not child-related expenses. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Morrison, listened intently. Her expression grew increasingly severe as the evidence piled up. Then Mr. Harrison dropped the biggest bomb. Your Honor, the petitioners are not seeking increased child support for the child's benefit. They are seeking it to subsidize a lifestyle they cannot afford. This is a misuse of the family court system and a manipulation of a father's love for his daughter. Judge Morrison turned to Troy. Mr. Troy, can you explain these financial documents? Troy shifted in his seat, his confidence cracking. Those are temporary setbacks, Your Honor. Investments take time to pay off. My business is sound. Your business shows 3 consecutive years of losses, the judge said, her voice sharp. You are facing multiple foreclosures. You have significant debt. How exactly do you plan to provide stability for this child? Troy fumbled for words, making excuses about market conditions and unforeseen circumstances. But it was clear he had no real answer. Then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Mr. Harrison asked me questions, and I answered them honestly. I talked about my relationship with Sophie, how I cherished every moment with her. I presented records of every expense, every activity, every way I showed up for her despite my modest income. Mr. Chandler. Mr. Harrison said, what is your primary concern in this case? My daughter's well-being. I said, looking directly at Judge Morrison. I do not care about fancy restaurants or designer clothes. I care that Sophie feels loved, secure, and valued. I care that she grows up with strong values and understands that a person's worth is not measured by their bank account. And I care that she is not being used as a pawn in someone else's financial game. Judge Morrison nodded, making notes. Mrs. Patterson testified next. She spoke about Sophie's progress in school, how engaged I was as a father, how Sophie always lit up on the days she knew she would see me. Her testimony was simple, but powerful. After all the evidence was presented, Judge Morrison took a brief recess to review everything. Those 20 minutes felt like hours. I sat in the hallway with Mr. Harrison, my leg bouncing nervously. Finally, we were called back in. Judge Morrison looked at everyone in the courtroom, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke. I have reviewed all the evidence presented today, and I am troubled by what I have seen. This court exists to serve the best interests of children, not to enable adults to maintain unsustainable lifestyles. The evidence clearly shows that the petitioners are experiencing significant financial hardship, and that their request for increased child support is motivated by personal financial need rather than the child's welfare. Amanda's face went pale. Troy stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Therefore, I am denying the request to increase child support. Furthermore, based on the evidence of financial instability and the manipulative behavior demonstrated by interfering with Mr. Chandler's visitation, I am modifying the custody arrangement. Effective immediately, custody will be shared 50-50 between both parents. I could barely breathe. 50-50. I would have Sophie half the time. Judge Morrison was not done. Additionally, given Ms. Amanda's current living situation and Mr. Troy's financial circumstances, I am reducing the child support payment to $1,000 per month, reflective of a more equitable distribution of expenses. I had won. Not just one, but one more than I had even hoped for. Amanda looked like she might cry. Troy's face was red with anger. Their lawyer gathered papers quickly, whispering to them urgently. Judge Morrison added one final warning. I want to be clear that any future attempts to misuse this court system or to interfere with Mr. Chandler's custody time will result in serious consequences. This child deserves both parents in her life, and both parents need to act in her best interests, not their own. Court is adjourned. The weeks following the court decision felt surreal. Amanda and Troy had to sell their house within a month. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they downsized significantly, moving into a modest rental. Troy's real estate business officially filed for bankruptcy. The luxury car disappeared, replaced by something far more practical. Amanda, who had avoided traditional employment for years, had to find a job. Their social media went silent. No more posts about fancy dinners or weekend getaways. The carefully curated image of success vanished as quickly as it had appeared. I did not gloat or feel triumphant. Mostly, I just felt relieved. The truth had come out, and justice had been served. The real change was in my relationship with Sophie. Having her 50% of the time meant we could establish real routines, deeper connections. The first week of the new arrangement, she was a bit confused by the changes. She asked why she was spending more time at my apartment, why Mommy seemed sad, why they had moved to a smaller place. I explained as gently as I could. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. What matters is that you are loved and you are safe and you have people who care about you. She seemed to accept that. Kids are resilient in ways adults forget. We settled into our new normal. I had Sophie every other week and alternating weekends. It meant restructuring my work schedule, coordinating with my boss to ensure I could be there for school pickups and drop-offs on my weeks. Everyone was supportive. My colleagues understood. My supervisor even told me, "Family comes first. We will make it work." Sophie and I developed new traditions. On school mornings during my weeks, we would wake up early and make breakfast together. She loved cracking eggs, even though half the shell usually ended up in the bowl. We would pack her lunch, and I would add little notes that said things like, "You are awesome," or "Have a great day, kiddo." After school, we would do homework at the kitchen table. I was not always great at second-grade math, but we figured it out together. Then we would cook dinner, something simple but made with care. Sophie started asking questions about ingredients, why we use certain spices, how flavors work together. She was curious about everything, and I loved watching her mind work. On weekends, we explored the city. We found free museums, parks we had never visited, hiking trails that were not too challenging for her little legs. We went to the farmer's market and let her pick out fresh fruit. We visited the animal shelter just to play with the cats and dogs, even though we could not adopt one yet. Money was still tight, but it did not matter. Sophie stopped talking about designer brands or expensive restaurants. She stopped comparing our life to some imaginary standard of luxury. Instead, she talked about the butterfly we saw on our hike, the book we read together, the cookies we baked that turned out lopsided but delicious. One evening, about 3 months after the court decision, Sophie and I were sitting on the couch reading a book about space. She looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Daddy, I like it better here." "Yeah, why is that, sweetheart?" She thought for a moment, her little face serious. "Because we have fun. And you are not worried all the time. Kids see more than we think they do." She had picked up on the stress at Amanda's house, the tension between Amanda and Troy as their fantasy life crumbled. At my place, there was no pretense. We were just ourselves. And that was enough. I did not hear much from Amanda directly. Communication happened through a co-parenting app, now keeping everything documented and civil. She seemed to have accepted the new arrangement. Occasionally, I would see her at school events, and we would exchange polite nods. Troy was rarely around. I suspected their marriage was under strain, though that was not my business. What mattered was that Sophie was thriving. Her teacher continued to send positive reports. She made new friends. She joined the school soccer team, and I never missed a game cheering from the sidelines with the other parents. She started taking piano lessons, practicing on a keyboard I found at a thrift store and refurbished. I thought a lot about the journey we had been through. That email demanding triple child support had felt like a nightmare when it arrived. But in a strange way, it had been a gift. It forced me to stand up for myself and for Sophie. It exposed the truth about Amanda and Troy's situation. It gave me more time with my daughter. I learned some valuable lessons through the whole ordeal. First, true wealth is not about luxury or material possessions. It is about integrity, love, and the relationships we build. Sophie did not need designer clothes or expensive vacations to be happy. She needed presence, attention, and genuine care. Second, standing up for yourself matters, especially when you are being manipulated or taken advantage of. But it is important to do it the right way, through proper channels with evidence and truth on your side. Emotions are valid, but strategy wins battles. Third, children see through facades. They might not understand all the adult complexities, but they feel authenticity. Sophie knew even at 7 years old where she felt most at peace. No amount of material luxury could replace the security of being truly seen and loved. Fourth, karma exists in a very real way. People who build their lives on lies and unsustainable choices eventually face reality. Amanda and Troy's house of cards collapsed under its own weight. I did not have to cause it. I just had to tell the truth and let the consequences unfold naturally. I was not bitter about Amanda anymore. She had made her choices influenced by Troy's toxic values and her own desires for a lifestyle she could not sustain. I felt sad for her, actually. She had lost her way chasing something that never brought real happiness. But those were her lessons to learn, not mine to teach. As for Troy, I had no ill will toward him either. His arrogance had been his downfall. He had underestimated me, thinking I would just roll over and accept their demands. He had miscalculated how far a father would go to protect his child. Now he was facing the consequences of his own financial recklessness and dishonesty. Most importantly, Sophie was now in an environment where she could grow up with solid values. She saw me work hard, manage money responsibly, prioritize what truly mattered. She learned that happiness does not come from things, but from connections, experiences, and integrity. Those were lessons that would serve her far better than any designer handbag or fancy restaurant ever could. On a Sunday evening 6 months after the court decision, Sophie and I were making our weekly trip to the library. She had already picked out a stack of books taller than her head. As we walked to the checkout desk, she slipped her hand into mine. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby. I am glad things are the way they are now." I squeezed her hand gently. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Looking back on everything, that email demanding triple child support was the best thing that could have happened. It forced me to fight to uncover the truth, and ultimately to give my daughter the life she truly deserves. Not one filled with fake luxury and debt, but one built on honesty, hard work, and real love. Sometimes the people who demand the most from you are the ones drowning in their own lies. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living your truth and letting their house of cards fall on its own. I did not destroy Amanda and Troy's fantasy. They did that themselves. I just refused to be a part of it. Now, as I watch Sophie grow into a confident, grounded kid who values people over possessions, I know we made it through the storm. The road was not easy, but it led us exactly where we needed to be. And that is worth more than any amount of money could ever buy. Have you ever had to stand up against someone trying to take advantage of you? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming challenges and finding truth. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for watching, and remember, your worth is not defined by what others demand from you, but by the integrity you bring to every situation. Stay strong and keep fighting for what matters most.